Hello, I'm Haran Burri from the University Hospital of Geneva in Switzerland, and I'm here in Lisbon at the EHRA 2019 Congress. And I'm joined here by my colleague Carina Blomstrom-Lundqvist from Sweden, and also Helmut Puererfellner from Austria. And we're here just to tell you, give a little snapshot of what's been going on here today. So Carina, just tell us what you saw today.
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting trials was the one presented by Haran from Maastricht, Netherlands, from the RACE 7 trial. It was a trial randomizing patients, recent onset AF patients, randomizing the patients between a wait and see approach for cardioversion and acute electrical or pharmacological cardioversion. And the interesting thing was that we don't know what to do with these patients actually, whether we should wait and watch to see or whether we should cardiovert immediately. Mm-hmm. So the primary endpoint was rhythm or sinus rhythm after 4 weeks. For the wait and see approach, the patients were instructed to phone the hospital if they cardioverted spontaneously, and if they didn't, they should seek the hospital again the day after. So all patients had a cardioversion within the 48 hours time frame.
So these were really AFib events that lasted since 48 hours or longer?
Yeah, shorter than 48
shorter
hours.
Than
yeah,
48
because of
hours.
the thromboembolic risk, of course. You wouldn't cardiovert anyone if the AF was
So there was no TEE or anything like that?
No, these were the paroxysmal AF patients with recent onset AF.
Yeah, and so what did the trial tell us?
think it's interesting that the rate of sinus rhythm at the primary endpoint after 4 weeks was equal, no difference. There was no difference in quality of life. The time for the index event, that is the day the patient stayed in hospital, was shorter for the wait and see approach, 120 minutes compared to 158 minutes. If you look at the rate of cardioversion, they cardioverted 69% of the wait and see approach, cardioverted spontaneously, so 24% had an electrical or pharmacological cardioversion. And the acute cardioversion, they were either electrical or pharmacological cardioverted, and all did that except for the 16% that actually spontaneously cardioverted before the cardioversion was
So what's the bottom line in the end?
Well, the bottom line is that the wait and see approach saves the patient's burden of staying in the hospital, and logistically it's very simple because the patient can go home, they cardiovert, and then they don't have to
So the rate of spontaneous cardioversion in such patients is high.
Absolutely.
So it deserves waiting in some patients if they don't have too much of a trouble.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because you will have to consult anesthesiologist or even pay for the pharmacological cardioversion.
Yeah. So were there actually any outcome measures such as quality of life or patient
quality of life did not differ.
Did not differ, and costs? Did they do any cost analysis?
They didn't present any cost analysis, no.
Right, yeah, okay. So one has to be patient as in many things in life.
Yeah, and it's published now in New England Journal of Medicine. So.
Oh, that's good.
Okay, great. What about you, Helmut?
Well, I was in one session and, that was about new technologies for ablation. And there's a lot of things going on at the moment. And the one thing that is quite interesting is this kind of high power, short duration ablation. So for routine ablations, we're using 30 watts for 30 seconds. And this is what we do. And we have some indices and we try to do our job as good as we can. But it's now showing more and more in the literature results that if we go higher with energy, so with power, 50 watts, then the lesions do not get bigger if we reduce time. So it goes more from the conductive heating of ablation to the resistive heating on the surface. And that's very good, because that might be more safety for the ablations, not even equally safe, but even safer if we stay more superficial with our lines as compared to deep lesions that we had. So what I've learned and what I've seen also in my own series of very high power ablation is that might be very useful and even safer than what we had. And this might change the strategies also for protection of the esophagus, because we might protect the esophagus more by going higher up with power, but on a short duration basis.
So in fact, there's maybe a bit more control, because with the conductive heating, it I suppose is affected by many other factors such as blood flow and so forth, whereas here you're not. So do you think it'll have the same efficacy?
we have been in a study, and it seems to be the same efficacy. Yes.
And no more gaps?
And no more gaps, because the lesion dimension in such lesions, they have done some comparison studies with the same ablation index, the lesion is shallower but wider. Okay. So the contiguity of the lesions is even better.
But so it's still unipolar ablation?
It's still unipolar.
And so how I heard they go up to 80, 90 watts? And
I was involved in a study where we had 90 watts for 4 seconds, and this worked quite nicely.
Well, it'll also speed up, I suppose, the procedures if you do.
Of course, I think this will be one of the big achievements for the next time. Also for procedural duration, fluoroscopy, and things like that, because you will be able to do it in 60, 70 minutes. An RF procedure, which is very short now.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Anything else, Carina, that you...
Well, another interesting study was the Danish trial. It was concerning CRT patients with conventional criteria, left bundle branch block, reduced ejection fraction, and so on. So this study randomized 120 patients between imaging guiding location of the CRT lead, the LV lead, and the other arm was targeting the latest electrogram in the left ventricle.
And imaging with what? Echo or?
No, the latest electrical activation. So they measured from the Q to the local electrogram.
Imaging,
the imaging was variable. I think it was up to the investigator to use either strain rate for echo, MR, or CT. So any kind of what they were acquainted with. The trial showed anyhow, the primary endpoint was left ventricular ejection fraction, and there was a difference in favor of the electrogram guided positioning of the electrode. So
which is a lot simpler actually.
It was very interesting. And the quality of life seemed superior in the electrical guided approach, but it didn't reach statistical significance. So I think they are pursuing a larger trial. These only included 60 patients in each arm. So I think it's quite...
I think that's an interesting evolution, because imaging is great, I'm all for it, but sometimes it's complicated, the reproducibility is low.
And it's more expensive also.
And it's more expensive, and you're actually on site, you know where you are in the vein, and you can choose there. That's interesting, something to follow up on. What about you, Helmut? Just a quick word still?
Yeah, there was another very interesting concept with regard to balloon-based ablation that I heard of, with the radio frequency balloons coming now onto the scene. And the last one I was really surprised and I was excited about that was that this electroporation thing comes on. And there was one report on electroporation. That is an old concept by itself. It was the old DC ablation time when we started in the 80s. And, you know, it was dangerous. You know, it was fulguration, you know, it was perforation. So we skipped totally this kind of DC ablation that was initially performed. And it was more or less discovered by chance when they did an electrocardioversion.
Just in a couple of words, how does it work?
Well, in a couple of words, it destroys, by making pores into the membrane, the cell. And then the cell gets inexcitable. And this is without, now, because of lesser energy, without any perforation risk and without any heating. It's no heating any longer. It's a heatless technology. They've just shown animal data, but I think this will drive research a lot in the next years.
And the main advantage is that it's tissue specific.
It's tissue specific.
Yes.
Well, and it's milliseconds where you deliver this energy. So it's
even
not
faster.
seconds, it's milliseconds. Well, so that's
something
very interesting
to follow up on. Okay, so that was just a couple of words, a little snapshot on what was going on here today in Lisbon. Thank you very much for listening.